Crystal, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the show.
Hi, Emily. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be part of it.
Well, I feel like you're definitely the expert in what we're doing right now, which is video podcasting, since you have the background in film and everything like that. So I appreciate you being one of my first guinea pig guests to try to do this video podcasting venture and working with me and everything. So I figured we could just start off by having everyone get to know you a little bit and just talk a little bit about who you are and your background, career, and hobbies and your family and whatnot.
Sure. So my name is Crystal Avila Floeder, and I grew up here in the suburbs of Chicago. And I went to school at the University of Notre Dame where I studied film. In particular, I concentrated on documentary filmmaking. And then from there, I have been working in the film industry actively as a director, producer, editor. And let's see, I'm married to my husband, Bernie. We met in college, and we're now the proud parents of two kids. Solly, or Solomon is his full name. He's 2 years old. And then we just had a daughter almost 6 months ago, actually, and her name is Violet.
Wonderful. So what made you get interested in film? I know that that's something that you're super passionate about, storytelling and telling stories. And that's, I guess, a little bit of kind of what we do at the podcast is just telling different women's stories. A big part of our podcast is that. So what made you get into the art of storytelling and the love for it?
Yeah, so actually, I think my love for storytelling and filmmaking began since I was a young girl, basically. So my mom likes to tell this story that when I was in the second grade, I self-produced a one-man show of Wizard of Oz. And I memorized all the lines from watching the movie. I loved it. And then I started to include my friends and teach them the lines. And we put on this full-blown show. And she always says the most savvy thing about all of that was that I charged people to come watch my show with me and my friends. And I think from there, I fell in love with kind of the spirit of storytelling, giving people some like entertainment in a sense, but also that kind of entrepreneurial aspect part of it, even as a young child. So going on from there, throughout middle school and high school, I was really active in the plays and in newspaper. So I was a journalist for my high school's newspaper. And I always loved, again, that aspect of entertainment, that whether you're, telling someone's story, is a beautiful thing, and that you can entertain other people through it and teach them something through it, whether that be through, different forms of media, writing, filming, what have you. And so when I was preparing to go to college, I really thought I was going to major in journalism, actually, because I loved that it was, full of storytelling. It was the real stories of people, and people could learn so much from one another, and we can grow as humans together. But when I was at the University of Notre Dame, I took this film course in the film department there, and it really changed the way I looked at storytelling. And this film course really concentrated on documentary filmmaking in particular. So I think after taking that class, I was just like, this is it. Documentary filmmaking is everything that I have been interested in since I was a little girl. And I just didn't know it. The storytelling aspect, there's so many different ways you can portray someone's story. You can add animation, the music you choose, right? The way you film it can tell the story in a different light. So yeah, that's kind of how I fell in love with filmmaking, in particular documentary filmmaking.
That's so true. The art of storytelling and just storytelling in general, the beauty, at least what I found in hearing different mothers' stories, is that sometimes there's not really an answer for a particular problem or issue that someone has. And just hearing other people's lives and what they've gone through kind of helps you kind of navigate your own life. And that's what I really like too, about just hearing different people's stories. And maybe you just connect with a little aspect of it, and that just really resonates with you and inspires you. And then you can kind of incorporate that into your own life. I'm curious too, how you've been able to juggle aspects of motherhood with filmmaking. As you know, motherhood is a very demanding job, and so is filmmaking. And somehow you've managed to continue pursuing your interest in storytelling and also your film career in just an inspiring way, and also being so present to your children. So how did you make all of that work?
Well, thanks so much for saying that. Well, it's, I made it work as I go in a sense. And I think I'm still learning of how it's all going to work day by day. And I think a lot of us moms are like that. We seeing, okay, how can I do this every day? How can I grow better as a mom? How can I grow better at my interests and hobbies or job or whatever I'm doing? But for me, when I graduated college, I was lucky enough to have a full-time job working at a film company. And that was great. And then I got married soon after, like a year and a half after graduating. And, that was great too. I continued to work full time. And then came along our first son. And I think it was almost kind of like a shock of, oh, wow, like taking care of another human is a lot of work and it's a big responsibility. I don't think until you know, until you experience it yourself. So after we had Bernie and I, my husband had our first son, Solly, I started working part-time for that film company. And then from there, I was like, okay, I'm going to cut back a little bit more and I'm going to become a freelancer. So when I was a freelancer, that was great because I had that flexibility. And I was also able to start working on some of my other film projects I'd been wanting to work on since graduating college, or, helping other friends, or people would come to me with ideas that they wanted either help producing, directing, editing, what have you. And then it got kind of like, okay, there's a lot going on. Like, how do I balance this all? And then comes along my second daughter, and my two kids are very close in age. So that presents another challenge. Just when I thought I had everything like set, like, okay, I'm a freelancer for this company. I'm going to be doing this or that. I'm going to film this for myself. Then comes kid number two. And I'm like, wow, that's a whole other, aspect of my life that I have to, juggle. Maybe is not the right word, but juggle, I'll say. And so from there, I decided that, I really wanted to create like a platform for my own creative work and being able to help other people maybe achieve their creative work through film or art. And so I decided to, with actually my siblings, to open up my own film art production house company. And that's kind of, it's been great so far. We're in the midst of launching it very soon, but already knowing that I can, in a sense, be my own boss and create my own hours and just, be able to say, okay, like I need to serve my children at this time, but I could work at this time, has been really helpful. So that's kind of how I've been balancing it so far, and then kind of see how it goes from there.
That's incredible, especially since you were just saying that, not only is being a mom very demanding, but also just the film industry in general is super demanding. So how are some practical steps that you're actually juggling both of those things? Because I talk to a lot of moms, and it's hard just to try to fit in like workouts or exercising and taking care of yourself. So what do your days look like in order to make that work?
So I have to say, I get a lot of help, and I give a lot of credit to my husband and to my mom. They're both incredibly supportive of my career and helping me achieve my dreams and my work that I want to do for myself and for other people. So basically, my husband and I have it set up where on 3 different days of the week, he'll start work earlier so that he can end earlier. And then I'll start working when he's done working, and he'll take care of the kids. And sometimes that even spills into, he'll take care of the dinner and bath time routine. And then I can work even through, when the kids fall asleep. So I get a large chunk those couple of days. And then every once a week, my mom is able to take care of my kids as well, which is super helpful, whether that be, time for me to edit, time for me to go film something, or just time to answer emails, right? Or develop different ideas and projects. So that's great too. And then I like to hustle a lot during nap times when possible, and during when the kids are asleep, basically. So I like to say that I am kind of the night hustler in a sense. So that's when that happens. But if I do have like a shoot, like a film shoot that I have to be on physically, then I definitely set up, care, whether that be through my mom, a sibling, or, a babysitter, that type of thing. That's how that works because you can't really physically bring children on a shoot. So the work that I can do from my home, we make it work within my home. And it's, every day you learn what works and what doesn't work. But I think for me, what really helped was actually sitting down with my husband and saying, okay, like what works for our family that doesn't take away from our family, but actually helps everyone be less stressed, right? With two different people working. So that's how I've been managing so far.
Right. I was just going to say that it sounds like you have to be on top of communication with your spouse because, as you know, that I myself juggle a lot of things. And especially since we also just recently added a second child, there has to be a lot of communication on what you need to get done for the day in terms of like both spouses have to be on the same page as, okay, I have to do this. And if I'm doing this, that means who's going to be doing this with the kids and all those sorts of things. So it sounds like that you got the communication part, which is half the battle. I'd love to go back to just talking more about your film, the film aspect of it, because I know that we're talking more about like the motherhood aspect too and how you make that work, but also just getting into the film aspect of it. Obviously, there's a lot of entrepreneurial aspects, I feel like, of what you're doing right now. And so many moms I talk to or know have like a side hustle or they want to have a side hustle. How, I guess, are some business tips if you have for other moms that kind of want to do that? Because I mean, just for me sitting back and listening to you, I'm like, I would have no idea how to do what you're doing. Right. But then obviously, like, I know how to do, I guess, like different things that I've launched in the past, where it's like a podcast or, opening up my own private practice, those sorts of things. So I've learned to do those things. But I feel like yours would maybe be a little bit more generally applicable to other moms who are kind of interested and maybe doing something on the side. So how do you approach that and get started?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess for me, for my profession in particular of filmmaking, it really helped me actually to have been able to work full time for a film company that is very well established at Spirit Juice Studios. Actually, I had a really great experience there and learned a lot. And actually being able to work as a full time project manager, editor, and producer there really helped me, develop my sense, I guess, of professionalism in my field. So that when I did, had to adjust when having kids, and also my husband and I moved around for a bit for a couple of years. So I had to adjust to going freelance. I think bringing in that experience and also bringing in experiences that I had from, in college internships, I'd have to say, and like creating my own film while I was in college, like all those experiences, I realized that like, everything you do, you can bring into your present, right? You learn something. And I'm sure, everyone has those type of experiences, that are unique to themselves, right? So I think that was like a big first thing that allowed me to be able to work professionally. And I would like, be my own boss type of thing. But also I have to say that, for me particular, opening my film company with my brother and sister has been really a big blessing because it's not just me doing everything. I have like a team. It's all three of us equally doing where our strengths play. I don't think you can like quote unquote have it all, right? Like people are like, oh, like I want to take care of my kids full time, but I want to open my company full time. I want to work,
Right.
10 hours a day. You can't do that, right? You have to, like, if you do want to if you want to take care of your kids 24/7, it's going to be really hard for you to maybe open a company or launch their start. Not that you can't, but it's going to be a little harder. Or, if you want to work full time, you can't take care of your kids 24/7. And there's no right or wrong answer, right? It's what's best for your life. But I think like for me in particular, knowing that I had always wanted to eventually kind of branch off and work on, my own documentaries, my own projects, and then offer services to other people. I always wanted to do that. But then I stepped back and saying, okay, is this a reality? Can I actually do my own projects well and serve others well, and maybe things that they hire me to do by myself? And the answer honestly is no. You need a good team. So I think the biggest tip I can do is give to someone is, have a team. So for me, that's, my team is my husband in one aspect, right? My mom, who's extremely supportive. And then literally, my brother and sister are helping me open this company so that we can all, take our talents, apply them, and not let just one person carry all the load. And so that way, you're not adding extra stress to your life in a sense, right? And, showing your kids
Right.
that, but you're
Mm-hmm.
also, you're serving your kids well, and hopefully you're able to serve those that your product or your profession well as too. So that would have to, those are, what has worked for me so far.
Definitely. So your brother and sister, are they have experience in the film industry too?
So we're going to be we're a film and art house, production house. So my brother has been an active artist for over, I'd say, 12 years now. So yeah, he um, has been in that side of the industry. And then my sister, she works in communications and management, actually. But she also she's very talented in story editing. So every time I make a film, my sister actually is there with me story editing, maybe not physically editing the film, but the way one would tell a story, to develop that story arc. She is a huge help with that. And then she also has a lot of experience in edits, like word editing, I would say, articles, websites, this or that. So for all of us, bringing those talents together is helpful, especially for me in a sense, as a mom of two little ones, it's good to have support.
Getting back into, I know that we talked a little bit about how you've set it up with your husband to make it work. Do you have any tips for moms who are listening on how that conversation goes with your spouse? Because I know just from my own experience and what we've had to do to make it work and just get on the same page and make sure someone's watching the kids and when someone else needs to get work done and those sorts of things. But do you have any tips from your experience on what has worked for you guys? And maybe it might work for a mom who's listening.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think my husband Bernie and I, we literally sat down one day and I opened up my planner. He opened up his work calendar, and because his job is a very 8 to 5 or type, what I mean, the very 8 hour day job, and mine's not. So we both literally physically sat down once the kids were in bed, so we could actually think while we grabbed a beer and actually okay, no distractions, what is realistically going to work for us, where we're not it's not like we're taking away from each other so that we don't ever spend time together, because that's really important too, right? You have to dedicate time so you can develop your relationship. It can't be like, anytime you're working, I'm with the kids. Anytime you're with the kids, I'm working, So it's like, okay, so that's what the first step is, being realistic about that. And then just, I think too, for me, it was really important to express to my husband, okay, this is why it was really important to me, and just, I think, getting genuine support on both sides, right? Because it's I can get support from him, but I'm also supporting him in his job, even though it may be a more full-time job. And I think moms who don't have maybe a very consistent work schedule, maybe you're not physically going into office, you have to realize too that your job and your endeavor, or whatever you're pursuing, is equally as important too, right? So it's treat yourself that way, right? As a professional. So that was the first step, is doing that, and then also being okay with having help. For me, I'm really lucky that I'm by a lot of families, so having help that way is a big benefit. So I don't know if people out there, either if you're by family or even if you have a friend. I have a lot of friends who call on friends or people they meet here and there, and even if it's for a few hours, right? A couple hours a week. So that's another thing that's useful for me. And then I would just say, even the little things in the house, okay, if you're working in an evening, who's going to cook dinner, right? Is that, I'm very lucky that my husband likes to cook. So a lot of times, he'll cook the dinner while I'm working. And so but everyone has a different situation. So what are little things you can take away? And then I think the biggest thing I learned from everything is not getting frustrated with myself, while I'm taking care of my kids, because there'll be a lot of times, or there were, and I'm still working on it. When maybe one kid's napping, or I'm feeding a bottle, or, feeding another baby, and I'm looking at my work emails or all the things in my to-do list for, professional life, but also home life. And I just get overwhelmed. So that I'm in front of my kids, I feel like I'm not actually in front of them. My mind's somewhere else. So one thing I've been trying to really work on is, being because I have this schedule, I know when I'm going to work.
Right.
it's okay if I think about work now and then, but I also need to realize that like me worrying about work right now is not getting work done. Like I need to just like be present to my
Right.
children. And then when I'm working, even if I can hear, my 6-month-old crying, but I know she's with dad, like trust my husband that he can take care of her now. Oh, she needs me because or my 2-year-old, I know exactly what he's saying. It's like, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
even if my husband or my mom are taking care of the kids, don't know every little intricate detail about the kids that I do because I see them 24/7. It's okay. It's okay, So I think those were like, though, especially that last tip is the biggest thing that like has helped me actually like be present in both my kids' life and then my work. So that's what I'd have to offer.
Right. That I just had to laugh when you were saying that because obviously my husband is watching the kids as we're speaking. And so I hear my daughter saying different things and like, oh, I hope he's getting her dinner or like something healthy or, just thinking of those things. I'm like, okay, have to trust, dad and just he might do things a little bit differently, but it's not necessarily a wrong way to do things. And then a lot of times, we've had a marriage specialist on in the past, and she was like, "Well, maybe you might like the way that he does certain things, and it's true because I obviously we learn from each other and everything. So sometimes I'll see how he does everything, and I'm like, okay, I can implement that or something like that. So, what are all the aspects that you will be doing for your film production company? Because to be honest, when I hear it, it sounds really cool, and all I know is that you're going to be making films or documentaries or something like that. But what exactly is it that you're going to be doing?
Yeah, so it's a film and art company, I would say. So it's called Buenas Noches Productions. So it's Good Night Productions, but Buenas Noches Productions. It's really rooted in my family's Mexican roots in a sense. So it's run by my brother, who's an artist, and me, filmmaker, and my sister, who's communications and also editor. When I say editor, I mean like, word editing. So we'll be offering, so basically the company will almost have two aspects to it. One will be, it's going to be kind of like a home for our own creative work or documentary films we put out, or maybe, different illustrations we make. We're going to want to have like a home for all of our personal work in a sense. So that's where my short documentary I made a few years ago called Debajo de los Árboles, or Beneath the Trees, will be housed. And then my future films will be housed there as well. But the other side of the company will be offering services to people who want to collaborate with us. It's been kind of something we've always talked about in a sense of, wouldn't it be great to have somewhere where, these creative things that we work on actually have a place where we can share them with people and, collaborate with people too. And it kind of just developed, especially as I'm currently in production for my next documentary called The Widows Club. That kind of just sparked everything. And, we came together like, let's do this. Let's put it together and kind of go from there. So we're really excited. So that's kind of what the company will be doing.
That's so cool. And you filmed the Widows Club when you were pregnant, right?
Yes, I did. So I filmed it this past summer. I was 7 and 8 months pregnant. Yes. So I wanted to make
That's
sure
crazy. And with COVID, right? So it was like
yes,
COVID plus
yes,
pregnancy.
yes, it was. We were going to film it earlier, but with COVID, it was really hard, obviously. So I thought waiting to summer would be a bit better because you can do a lot more things outside, or um, just
Mhm.
see kind of what the restrictions were in the world at the time. But just we kind of went with the flow and just we're living in COVID times and we're going to film in COVID times in the safest way possible. So yeah, that was an adventure, but
Right.
definitely, something that I knew I needed to get done before my daughter was born, because if not, I
Right.
knew it'd be harder with two little ones to film a documentary. So now I'm editing it, which was, it's a lot easier, I should say physically easier, because you're sitting in a chair editing. It
Right.
takes a lot more time for sure. But yeah, so that right now I'm editing
Yeah.
that documentary.
Yeah. I feel like it's a little bit more mom friendly, maybe to edit, right? As opposed to
Yeah.
filming.
Well, yeah, because you can, oh, I'm jumping on my computer now, or I'm going to do it after nap time. Where when I
Mhm.
physically go on a shoot or filming something, it's like, okay, I have to plan okay, someone's taking care of the kids, especially when, yeah, if you're pregnant, you're on your feet a lot, right? And that could get really tiring, or the cameras are heavy or whatever. So yeah, it just worked out
Right.
this way.
Yeah, when I saw those pictures of you when you were filming when you were pregnant, I was just so impressed because I don't know, and my pregnancies are just super difficult for me. But then also, I feel like even when you're super large, it's really difficult to do different aspects and just get up and get moving and everything. So I just thought it was really inspirational and just to see you doing all of that.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that. Well, I had a good team too. It wasn't just me doing everything. So I definitely had a really great team. I kind of forced myself to, I usually like to also film and direct, do both. But this time around, I decided to hire a few more people to help film it because it was, the safe and smarter thing to do. And I can concentrate more on directing and not, holding heavier things being 8 months pregnant. So I have to say, like, it really does. It feeds my soul to know I have, like, I feel like for me, postpartum, it helps me to know that, like, I have a project to work on. I don't know why, but mentally it's like, okay, like, yes, I'm taking care of baby, but I also have this project that I can work on. So, just helps me. So it all worked out really well.
Definitely. No, I can relate to that too, because, with my private practice that obviously I couldn't really take much of a maternity break as if, you're working for a company, you can take as long of maternity leave as you want, or, it's protected by law or whatnot. So when, I was still doing a little bit of work as I've been on maternity leave, then it just gave me something to do. And it just, as you were saying, it just kind of helps a little bit with, even if does take twice as long or longer because of sleep deprivation or whatnot, it just gives you something to do. So I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about both of the documentaries that you have made. Well, I guess you made one documentary and then you're also, still in post-production for the other one. But the first one that you had mentioned, and I haven't taken Spanish since college, so I'm a little rusty on it, but Beneath the Trees, that was live streaming on Amazon. Is that correct?
Yes, it was. So that's a documentary film I made my senior year of college at Notre Dame. And it was for my thesis in a sense, but then after I graduated, I kind of polished it up more. And then I submitted that into some film festivals, and I was lucky enough to get into some great film festivals across the country and screen it there. And that was a great experience. And then it lived on Amazon Prime for a little while. And then now it's going to be housed in our Buenas Noches Productions website so that people can stream it there.
That's so neat. So speaking of different documentaries and films or whatnot, I know that I follow your film Instagram page. It's Crystal. Well, you can say the handle. I'll probably butcher it because I don't remember it exactly. What's your Instagram handle for the film?
Sure. My film page is Crystal Avila Films.
Okay. I guess that's pretty easy, but I just didn't know what the correct order of it was. But I love how you post on there different recommendations for movies and documentaries or films or whatnot. And then you talk about why you like a certain film. So anyone listening, I highly recommend you just follow if you want to find out what's good and what's good in streaming right now. So what are some favorite films and documentaries or TV shows too that you and your husband have been enjoying lately?
Yeah, so there's a lot out there. There's a lot in the streaming world. So I have to say, you do have to look a little bit harder sometimes. But I'd say one that I recently rewatched is called Minding the Gap. And that one actually went through its film festival circuit at the same time my short was going through.
Wow.
So I actually got to meet the director one time at the festivals, and he did great, went to Sundance and all the bigger festivals. And then it was actually nominated for an Oscar too. So that's great. But that's streaming on Hulu. So it's called Minding the Gap. And that one's great. It's just a very raw story that was filmed over, I think it was more than 5 years it was filmed.
Oh, wow.
Kind of like a compilation of the story of these 3 skateboarders in Rockford, Illinois. So I suggest that one. That one's really great. It just really paints a picture of like how people live very differently in this world. And I think it's a very thought-provoking film. And then I love this documentary called Hero Dreams of Sushi. I have to say, it's like one of my favorite documentaries, and I always suggest it to people. That's on Netflix.
Okay.
It's about this Japanese sushi chef, and it's just beautiful. Just his like work ethic is very inspiring. I think it's very inspirational for anyone. So those would be like 2 of my favorite ones. Let's see, TV shows. I Ted Lasso on Apple TV was really good. That one recently came out. Trying to think what else. I don't know. I'm a sucker for like the Breaking Bads, Better Call Saul. Those are such
Oh yeah,
high
those are
production
good.
quality. I love. I mean, yeah, they're. It's just amazing the thought that goes into every episode. So, but of course, I still like Parks and Rec and The Office. I'm not just I like an array of ones. So those are like also those are some of my favorites.
Yeah, that's one thing that I do appreciate about your recommendations too, is that they're not just all the same type of show or documentary or whatnot. It's like a really wide variety. And then you explain why you like different aspects of the films, because obviously I haven't taken a film class or anything, so I don't really know. But when when you point out, or if I hear other people point out what's really cool about the filmography or how something's been filmed, then I can appreciate it more and better. My husband tends to be more a lot better about that than I am. So sometimes I'll just write off a film like, oh, I don't want to watch that because it's not just doesn't appeal to me. But then when he explains something about it, then it really piques my interest, and I think, oh well, now I really want to know about that. So just as you were saying, like the Better Call Saul, the Breaking Bad, I really like how they do the cold opens for those.
Right. So the show will just bring you, it's basically, it'll bring you into like a scene where you don't know what's happening. You may see, I clearly remember in one of the Breaking Bad episodes, you just see a teddy bear floating
Right.
around in like someone's pool. And it's very, you're just like, what? And it's very like, you're in that world, obviously, because you're watching the show, but you have no idea whose world within that world that you're in. And then the show does an amazing job of like, towards the end of it builds up to almost that scene. And you're like, and without, you're like, oh my gosh, I did see that before. They're not so obvious
Right.
about it, but it's there. So it definitely makes you think like the cold opening is supposed to be something that's like very thought provoking and almost like the central theme of that episode or movie or what have you. So
Right, exactly. Yeah, so that's just one example that my husband told me about the cold open, and I wasn't really familiar with it. And then I got really excited about it. And then when you see the beginning scene, you're like, oh, what's going to happen in this, or how's it going to tie into the storyline? And it just gets a little bit more addicting, I guess, to watch the show. So
yeah, it's a great form of storytelling because I think the beauty of like any type of filmmaking or storytelling, whether it's like documentary or fiction, is that you can truthfully manipulate the story in a sense, right? You can like bring people in to be attracted to a story without like taking away from the truthfulness of it, if that makes sense. So I think it's always just, I think it's like a fun way to tell a story. Tell the story from a lens that someone might not naturally see it in.
exactly. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So how do you incorporate motherhood into your filmmaking, or do you feel like motherhood has changed how you make films, since you obviously were producing and making films before having kids, and then now that you do have children, do you kind of look at the art of storytelling a different way?
In a sense, I guess like in a sense, yes, because I feel like I look at the films or the documentaries or even like short commercials I directed with the film company I worked for after college. And I'm always like, okay, I could have done some things better, but like, I'm proud of them. I think we did a good job. But I think like every year that like I mature as just a human in general with more experiences, that after I got married, having my first kid, having my second kid, even just relationships with different friends as those evolve too. I feel like, everything kind of affects the way I storytell in a sense, because I feel like the more I mature in life, the more I understand the human better in a sense, like human emotions. So even like when I think like raising like a toddler and a baby at the same time, I see their very different emotional needs, right? And then
Right.
even emotional needs that maybe your husband or sister or brother need too from you, right? I think like really leaning into that. And then when I go into like a film, like when I was filming The Widows Club and interviewing, in that film I interviewed I think like over 10 different people. And I think just bringing those experiences that I've had from different relationships or past documentaries allows me to interview people better, if that makes sense. So like, it's almost like you're learning, it's like an anthropological study in a sense. Every film
Right.
I feel like I make, because it's, you're concentrating on a certain type, maybe a group of people that have something in common. But
Right.
even, I feel like for me, I bring in my experiences a lot. And I definitely think having kids has made me a better filmmaker because one, I am more organized. Two, like my time is more precious. So I think
Right.
my work has been almost better in a sense because of that. And then three is just, uh, having to have having kids matures you faster, I feel like, in a sense. So that definitely helps. And just knowing that, like, no matter what, my kids will love me, that helps a lot too, no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that it kind of reminds me of just a few days ago. I was holding our son James, and he's only 3 months old, on my lap, and he was just so content on my lap, and I was holding him because he's like a total mama's boy, as I was mentioning earlier. So sometimes only me holding him will console him. But he was just on my lap, and my husband walked by, and then he just looked at James on my lap, and he said, "Well, he's not happy or sad. He's just being on you." And that's something I never even thought about before. And when you're talking about just studying humans in general and figuring out their emotions and everything, I never really thought about that was an actual kind of emotion or presence, is that you don't always necessarily have to be like happy or sad, that sometimes it's just being and just existing, and that there's something peaceful about that, and that kind of neutral emotion. And just him saying that, and then me realizing that, then I realized, wow, now I understand people even better.
Yeah, it's amazing what the little ones can teach.
Yeah. So I don't know if you've had any certain aspects in your motherhood where you realize that, you don't have to be a perfect mom and it's okay to be a good one instead. But this is a question that we always ask all of the moms that come on our show, in line with our model that there's no way to be a perfect mom, but many ways to be a good one instead. And I'm curious, it sounds like your path towards incorporating film, or integrating it rather, into your motherhood, that's maybe taught you that. So I don't know if there's a specific example that you can share where you kind of realize that even more fully.
That's a great question. I feel like I come across that every day. I think one, I may have mentioned it slightly earlier, but well, I think one specific one would be, there was one day that I'd already scheduled with my husband that I was going to work from, 4 p.m. to, let's say, 8 p.m. And I was playing with my son, Solly, and we are just having so much fun. I'm like, oh, this is so, I'm fully present to him and making him laugh so much. And my husband comes up, like, okay, it's time for you to go. You said you're going to go do this. Go. I got the kids. And I'm just like, oh gosh, okay. Like I want to go work, but I also felt like so guilty for some reason, as if like my son needed me to make him laugh for 30 more minutes, even though I was with him, since 5 a.m. So I think at that moment I was like, I just felt so guilty for really no reason.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, mom's gonna go to her room. And then, he ran after me, he was kind of banging on the door, like, mom, mom, mom. And I was just like, oh gosh, like, what am I doing? Like, he needs me, I'm not being present. And then I remember I came out, I'm like, I can't concentrate. And my husband's like, it's fine. You were with him all day. Like, don't worry. Like, you're being a great mom. You're also being a great mom by doing something that helps you, helps our family, and helps other people too. Right. So I think that's like one specific example that I realized, like, there's no such thing as a perfect mom. So there's no such thing as a perfect person. And, I think as long as like we're trying to be like our version, or the best version of ourselves, basically, is what perfect is for us. So in a sense, it's like you're living that imperfect perfectness. So I remember going back to my room, sitting on my chair, and I think that was like the best 2 hours to 3 hours that I edited my documentary film, and I got a lot of headway on like the story arc and everything. And I just felt like, like I'm not perfect, and my child's not perfect, husband's not perfect, no, but it's okay. Like, we're doing a good thing, and everyone's loved, everyone's cared for, and no one's, not being taken care of. I don't know, so I think that's like one specific example where it really showed it's like,
Right.
It's all good.
I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your exciting news, and also just your journey of trying to make your dream career work with being a mom. It's just so inspirational. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks so much, Emily. And I really appreciate it. And I'm really inspired by your career journey too. It's a lot of fun to see how it's developing. And I love the Motherhood Co. Instagram, podcast, everything. So thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you.